Hi, girl. How are you?
All right, everybody. I hope your lunch conversation has been stimulating and exciting. And I'd love to get your attention now. If you can wrap up your conversations and find your seat. We have a very special guest today. And we are, first of all, let me just tell you, people are loving Fort Worth.
Good.
And now we have the mayor of Fort Worth, Mattie Parker.
Nice to see everybody. I've had a nice time in our city, right? Now, all of you should have cowboy boots by now. No? Not yet. I promise they go with everything, right, Leah? They really do.
They do, and I think some people didn't take us seriously when we said, you know, bring your boots, and then when they arrived, I said, you've got every place known to man to buy your boots here.
Yes,
so
we do.
We are delighted to be in Fort Worth for a number of reasons, but I want to share a little bit. For those of you that don't know Mayor Parker, she was elected in June 21, and you're the 45th mayor of Fort Worth, and you lead one of the fastest growing cities in the nation. And you've really set your focus on key issues that sort of move Fort Worth forward: economic development, growth, innovation, transportation, mobility solutions, quality education, and really making sure every student has an opportunity to thrive, which of course fits very, very well with our theme today. But you're also focusing on building safer and more prosperous communities for all your citizens. So your background, you're a licensed attorney. I'm a recovering attorney myself, so I appreciate that. And you had 17 years of experience in national, state, and local public affairs. And then you were chief of staff for the previous mayor, right?
That's correct.
So what an interesting journey. But I think what's going to be fun today, sort of a full circle moment, is you were the founding CEO of the Fort Worth Cradle to Career Program, Tarrant 2 through Partnership T3, correct?
Yes.
All right. Well, I want to start a little bit, now that we have some background. You grew up in Hico, Texas, right? Mm-hmm. So how is growing up in that small town, really in a rural community, shape sort of who you are now as a leader?
Yeah. So I know many of you are not from Texas. We're glad that you're here. You're welcome to stay. Everyone else seems to like that. Fort Worth grows by about 370-ish people every single day. We are the fastest growing city, which is a lot to keep up with. But if you've gotten a flavor for our city in the last day and a half, you probably noticed we feel like a small town in a lot of ways. I hope people have been really welcoming and been excited that you're here, and that's something we really want to hold on to in our city. Yeah, I grew up in a town of 1,300 people. My graduating class was 42 kids. We were really together K through 12, which is pretty incredible. It's not uncommon for me to text with friends from high school. I grew up, as I was just sharing backstage, on a dirt road about 2 miles off the main highway. I was 15 miles outside of town. I started driving at 14. Out of necessity. You get a hardship license at 15. My mom was like, just start driving. I can't do this anymore, with all the different activities. I kind of had an eclectic background, though. I was raised in a small town, but my dad was a criminal defense attorney, and he had an office in downtown Hico. And my mom was a professional ballerina that had come home. She was from Hico originally. She had a dance studio. So you imagine that, because I had these wonderful, educated parents living a really eclectic life, but also in the bubble of a small town, which was really special. I've talked about this a lot, that I sometimes wish everyone could be a part of a small town at some point in their life, because we just take care of one another. We don't care who you are, where you're from, where you go to church, any of your economic background. It's sort of irrelevant. It's just sort of a take care of each other attitude. And I hope that I have that same reputation, both now as mayor, as a leader, as a mom, as someone in my community, is just sort of take care of people, right? You should just have empathy and love for one another. And I think that's why Fort Worth is such a place that my husband and I were drawn to. We moved here about 16 years ago and have called this place our home. So the small town values definitely run true today in my own life.
Well, it's so interesting because, I live in Dallas, and a number of you are from Dallas, and the difference in that community feel, it's distinct. You feel it when you get here. So I think Fort Worth has the history and the charm, and I think many people here are experiencing it. But now, you're in this place to sort of take it to the next level that we're going to talk about. But I'd love to know a little bit more, because I think we have a number of our members who they have a desire, right, to serve, perhaps run for office. And you went straight into sort of policy and politics out of law school. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I actually went to law school part-time. I never quit working. So I started my first job as a junior at UT Austin in the Texas Capitol, and got the bug and absolutely loved it and stayed working. And then when my husband and I moved to Texas, or just Fort Worth rather, I enrolled in law school part-time in the evenings. And I did that, and then I had our first child my second semester 2L year a week before finals. I would not recommend that to anybody. I didn't know what I didn't know, honestly, to survive that. But I was glad I did it because it allowed me to keep my foot in the game. I was afraid to leave the workplace and leave the political journey I had been on for three plus years and leave to go to law school. So I just juggled during that time period and really loved it. Actually, when I finished law school and I had been working for a congresswoman here in Fort Worth, Kay Granger, and I left her office to go practice law. And I was doing that and enjoying it, actually, even though 1 billion hours is terrible. I still enjoyed it. And Mayor Price called and said, I need a new chief of staff. Would you be interested in talking about that? I had never thought about local government, frankly. And I would tell you now, and maybe this is a take-home item, there is nothing more important than what is happening in your city hall every single day. Nothing, bar none. And your county, for that matter. We spend so much time focused on national politics, and we have very little impact on the nonsense that happens there. And what we really need to care about is what's happening in your city to really make sure it's a place that you can raise your family proudly and have for the next generation. So
absolutely, that's something we talk about on the daily here. So when you entered into sort of that new realm, working with Mayor Price, when in this journey did you think, okay, I want to step into the arena, I want to run for office, and then what was your biggest challenge in that?
So I never really wanted to do this. I really didn't. I didn't. I think I knew too much. I had been behind the scenes. I consider myself a policy wonk. I really enjoyed getting in the weeds on items, which is why this group is so interesting to me, understanding what's happening, how do you move things. I loved that piece of the work, and I had left actually during COVID, long planned to found the Tarrant 2 and 3 Partnership, which we'll talk about next with Michelle, and that's what I was doing, raising money on Zoom and trying to found this education nonprofit in a crisis in education. So when the decision came to run for mayor, I was not supposed to run, right? I knew this was not something I'd planned. At the time, we had a 5 and a 10-year-old. Our daughter was 19. Now they're 6, 11, and 20. And it was just a strange time. The reason why I did it, and I meant this lovingly to the other people that ran. There were 10 people that ran for office. There was 10 and then down to 2. They weren't right for Fort Worth. It wasn't that they were bad people. Maybe I didn't agree on other policy items, is that we as a city are at this incredibly important juncture of who we want to be when we grow up. And I want us to be a place that is welcoming for all, that moves people forward, that's focused on the right policy issues. And I just didn't see that. What I saw was partisanship. What I saw was more of what we see in Washington and in our state governments, and I just didn't want that for my city. So I was just nuts enough to say, why not? And I had no name ID. I'd never run for office before. I wasn't supposed to win. And I'll never forget, someone told me when I decided, announced and won, and I ran into this person who I'd been friends with for years, and he said, you know, you've put us all in a really awkward position. And I said, well, touche, you go about your day. I don't care. I'll see you on the other side of this. And that just reaction of who do you think you are as women, right? We get that a lot. And the other thing that I can't tell you is so true, I've read this before in all of the groups that help advocate for women to run for office or be involved in policy and politics. You hear them say it takes for a man, you tell them one time they can go do it, they'll go do it. They have that gumption enough to realize they are capable. Women, it takes 7 to 10 times of convincing her she is ready to go do this role. And so maybe in all of this chaos of running a city and being in this job that some days is terrible, some days is awesome, I hope to inspire women like you to say, wherever you want to serve, whether it's running for office or being in a policy position or just showing up, please do that, because our voices are so vitally important.
Amen. Very good. So I want to focus in on Fort Worth for just a moment. So you've got a number of pretty high profile, large new development, commercial developments. You're getting a new research and development center. I guess Texas A&M is coming in. So you're really looking at some innovative ways, right, to attract business to Fort Worth. Kind of what is your vision for the city moving forward?
Yeah. So one of the first conversations I had, there's a gentleman from Fort Worth named John Goff who has been incredibly successful in real estate and development. And John and I sat down when I was first elected, like first 2 weeks, and we were talking about the Texas A&M project because he had been so helpful in helping attract A&M to understand the significant investment that was possible here to create Aggie Land North, as we're calling it lovingly. And there's a significance to that project. But he said something, and I've talked about this at my State of the City a few weeks ago. He just simply said, look, we need to be focused as a community on projects that change the architecture of Fort Worth. And by that, the things that will change us forever in the good ways, that move us forward and make us an attractive place for top talent, to retain top talent. And for me, that third pillar is a place where you want to raise your family, that we are centric on families, because that is what's missing in this country right now, is the emphasis on families. And so I have carried that theme. I can't tell you, 4 times a day I'll hear him in the back of my mind. Does this move us forward? Does this change the architecture of our city? And I notice myself getting a little grumpy when I'm dealing with things that don't move the city forward, that are a crisis of du jour of the day, and I'm not focused on moving our community the way it wants to and changing the architecture of our city. There's another, his hotel is opening, the Crescent Hotel, the Bowie House Hotel on Camp Bowie. You're sitting in the Stockyards redevelopment, which has been incredibly impressive. I've gotten to work on this project from the ground up to re-envision. This hotel was not here, y'all. There was nothing here. The mule barns are historic mule barns. They invested tens of millions of dollars to make this possible and attract. And they're only just getting started. They're only about 25–30% developed. So you can imagine what this looks like. And this project, to me, is perfect for you to see in our city. We need to be doing things that keep us progressive, but also have a heart to understand where our history and heritage is as a city. We're very proud of our Western heritage. We also have more to offer than just that. So this project is sort of indicative of that.
It is a great mix, and I think so many people have been here to experience this, and they're brand new. And when I tell them the cattle are still going up and down twice a day, I think there's a little shock for like our Illinois and Wisconsin friends. I said, no, it's happening, it's safe, go down there. But I do think honoring that history while you look forward, right, is incredibly important. And I know we have a number of our members here who, you mentioned something I think is important. You know, they kind of maybe get bogged down in the current struggles, whatever crisis is dominating sort of their lives. How do you suggest that, you know, as leaders, we take a more holistic and like strategic view to try to not get too bogged down, right, in some of those daily struggles?
Honestly, I don't have it figured out yet. It's really easy when you're dealing with the latest crisis to forget why. What is your why? What are you doing? This is so frustrating, especially when it's things that are not of your own making. Anybody can relate to that. Like you're dealing with other people's problems and you're the one having to fix them. It feels like that's my life.
Get it?
This morning the crisis was I have to leave by 7:15. I have an 11-year-old who could not find the right color football jersey. And that was the crisis as I was leaving. I'm like, I'm leaving. I'm so sorry. You're in the wrong color jersey. Enjoy your day. I don't know what to tell you. I did the laundry. It's somewhere in the house. It's somewhere in the house. But I will say, this is interesting in policy and politics. We don't take a playbook lesson from those in business leadership. The CEOs and top-level C-level leaders that are leaving major organizations, they do this every day because their company bottom line depends on it. What are the top 3 things we're going to do as a company? And if it's not in those categories, I shouldn't be doing this. I had sort of an epiphany moment last week and last Friday night. I was at an event at Dickey's Arena, having a great time, having a glass of wine with a friend who runs a major corporation. And he said, how can I help you? And I said, well, talk to me about your leadership style. And we had this whole dialogue about, you know, he runs an organization that's over 20,000 employees across the globe. And he's like, you got it. If they walk in your office and they've got a problem without a solution, you send them back out. And if they're not focused on the 3 things that really move the bottom line, we're doing that. So Brittany, who's on my staff, is here with me. We were just talking about this morning. What are our 3 things? And I don't want to talk about anything else. Because the hamster wheel of politics and the next crisis easily eats you alive. So I'm working on that. I'm a work in progress.
I think we're all a work in progress, but I do think you're sort of a little bit ruthless elimination, right, of some of those distractions is so important.
Yeah, and we do it, I mean, you're a mom, we do this in our personal lives really well, where you're just, you can play whack-a-mole really well and move things on and just get on with your life. I don't know why I've struggled with that as mayor. It's the same thing I do every day at home, right?
Yeah.
Find your jersey, I don't know, not my problem. I'm gonna do that when I go to City Hall today. I don't know, not my problem, you go fix that.
Your chief of staff is gonna be like, what, are we talking about laundry or what's happening? I know. No, but I think that's a really good lesson for all of us. And I think there's times that we're afraid to say no. I mean, I think that is part of the issue, isn't it? Like, and when you're elected, right, you're serving so many different constituencies. So I kind of want to finish with one question with you, and then we're going to bring out Michelle to talk about an important topic that I know for you. But, you know, at the end of the day, and maybe you're not even thinking about this yet, but, you know, what do you want your leadership legacy to be?
Ooh, good question. What do I want my leadership legacy to be? I want people to know that I cared. that I may not have made all the right decisions, that I will make plenty of mistakes, but that I got up every single day because I loved this city so fiercely, and it's not about politics. It's not about my next thing. It's not about whatever. It's about how do you serve your city and your community in the here and now, and that I really did care. And then the second piece, as I mentioned earlier, is we've done a lot of work around being the best place for kids in the country, being the best place for families. And that's not just a marketing tagline. That's truly how I feel. Because if we can learn how to take care of our youngest and our next generation of leaders, the rest of it all works, right? If you can take care of our children and families, every city can thrive. And we've lost sight of that. We are so focused on the frivolousness of partisan politics, we've forgotten who we're supposed to be there for. And I just want to be an example for that.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for your service.
Let's bring Michelle out.
You come to Fort Worth, you get some straight shooters, so this is fun, isn't it? All right, I am so excited to bring Michelle Thomas onto stage. Hi, Michelle. Welcome. All right, we're going to shift gears just a little bit, but not too far, because Michelle Thomas is the philanthropy leader, really, for North Texas and Oklahoma for J.P. Morgan Chase & Co. This includes about $20 million of grant making and investment and strategically sort of improving economic opportunities for individuals. And so I think what's going to be an interesting take here is because, as we mentioned, Mayor Parker was prior to this role right now, CEO of T3, and then you have been instrumental in a very substantial investment from J.P. Morgan Chase to invest in this T3 initiative as well. And so I'd really love to discuss both of you, because I think we're seeing this sort of permeate our conversations right now, the importance of education, of workforce development. That's really foundational to building thriving communities. And so I think, if you don't mind, Mayor Parker, telling us, why is T3 sort of uniquely effective? And I read somewhere about a T3 pledge, so I'm curious about that.
And I know Leah King is here as well, who's CEO of our United Way here in Tarrant County. She serves on our board and executive committee, and importantly was there from the very beginning. So thank you to Leah for being here also. I think as your Link sister, I just learned that. Yes. Love that. So we started the exploration of Tarrant to and through when I was still Chief of Staff for Betsy and traveled the country. You've heard of College Promise programs. Many of you may have them in your communities, but we knew it needed to be more than that. Money for college and scholarships is not enough to get our students to and through and on to what their pathway and career success really looks like. And lucky for us, when we started Tarrant to and through, Michelle and a good friend of mine, Jeremy Smith, who runs the Rainwater Charitable Foundation, had an existing relationship that was really strong. And Jeremy had been talking to Michelle about us starting Tarrant to and through and how it would align with J.P. Morgan. Many of you may not remember this, but J.P. Morgan has really been leading this conversation for over a decade with the New Skills at Work study. And T3 is really just that. It is helping our students really starting their freshman year, also middle school, start some training, helping them to and through onto post-secondary pathway of success, college, career, or military. Our pledge is to get students starting their junior year to pledge their own success. What does it look like? I'm going to have a pathway outside of high school. Because the statistics are alarming, and each of you may have different numbers you could look at in your communities, but in Tarrant County, only 23% of our students are making it to a onto post-secondary credential, 2-year or 4-year degree. You can't survive like that. 70% of jobs require a post-secondary credential. Our students, all kids in all zip codes, deserve a high quality of education, and they need to dream bigger. The caveat here is I do not think every kid needs to go to 4-year university. It's not the right thing for our economy, and it's not the right thing for them personally. Yeah. But it can't be to their detriment. It has to be a pathway to success in life and career, which is why it's been so helpful to work with Michelle and J.P. Morgan. And you should share kind of the why y'all got involved. I met Michelle on Zoom.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'd like $1 million, please. Nice to meet you. And somehow it worked. It was great. Yeah.
Well done.
It was exactly like
It was like that. It literally was.
And then she ran for mayor, and I was like, oh my God.
What is happening?
$1 million investment this city.
And I think I had Great Laney in my lap, and I was like, this is such a big day, and I've got a 5-year-old who won't get on Montessori Zoom school. Will you please just go sit? Yeah.
So I would just say, first of all, thank you so very much for this invitation. Honestly, in leading philanthropy for Texas, but more specifically managing the North Texas portfolio, I had been really trying hard to build out a regional workforce strategy that was really focused in on systems change. We had made a significant investment of $3 million in 2018 to the Commit partnership that was doing exactly this model. And early on, tried to say, okay, we're going to build out this regional workforce strategy, met with the chamber, met with the community college, but you really needed someone like the Rainwater Foundation that seeded the first level investment, brought us to the table, which really made it work. And what we do and think about with our philanthropy, it really is about system change. There's nothing wrong with direct service type programs that train people, you invest in them, you place them, it's retention. It's another thing that say that when you are working across the district and when you're working around a community college that has agreed to put in the last dollar scholarship, because what the program really is what Mayor has said, is that if I am a student that is on a Pell Grant and I want to go on to get some sort of post-secondary credential, there is a gap in what the Pell Grant does not pay that the community college will come in and put in that scholarship. And by the way, if you want to go on to four-year institutions, in some models like Dallas, there are four-year institutions that if I decide to go on, that opportunity sits there. And so that is system-wide change so that any student in Tarrant County can go on to get a post-secondary credential, which I think is huge. And then when the mayor decided to run, like I said, we got this investment is on the table, and now we're at $3 million in this program, and it is amazing, and Natalie is doing an incredible job.
She is, absolutely.
So obviously we're focused on creating sort of this pipeline, right, of opportunity and better prospects for individual students that can change the life of the whole family. I'd like for a minute though, Mayor Parker, you to tell us about how does this make Fort Worth more competitive? How does this put you in a place to create more opportunities for more of your citizens?
Yeah, so I think in two ways. First is businesses go where the talent is, right? And COVID showed us very clearly that people across this country moved a lot of from our coastal cities to places like Fort Worth in the heartland of the country for quality of life, first of all. Now our job is to make sure we also take care of the students that are in classrooms across Fort Worth and providing them this high quality opportunity to dream big and fulfill their lifetime promise of, coming out of generational poverty, realizing what they wanted to do in life. And right now, they probably don't even know what's possible. None of us do, frankly. The world is changing so rapidly. And that's really the why behind what we have to do as a community to be more attractive and attract top talent. The other piece that's been so powerful of having JP Morgan at the table is getting the interest of other business leaders and corporations. We were talking about this backstage. Because to have an organization and business leaders like Michelle and her team at the table and willing to lend their credibility to T3, now you're getting noticed by other corporations that have a large presence here. Maybe their headquarters isn't here, maybe they have a hub. They're talking to their other business leaders to say, hey, you've got this organization in a city the size almost 1 million people that is helping facilitate what your workforce needs are. That's pretty powerful to lend a hand to getting people to be interested in coming to Fort Worth.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear more about that, Michelle, because I mean, you really kind of took that first leap of faith, right? And obviously you had the Rainwater Foundation and some of these other groups. How are you going about pulling in other corporations and having them understand the importance of this work? What are you guys doing in terms of building that coalition?
Yeah, I would say that I think as major employers, we all know, as Mayor indicated, is that by 2036, 71% of the jobs will require some level of post-secondary credential, right? Yet only 30-something% are actually high school students that actually have it, and so employers get it. I think what we are hoping to accomplish is that employers will inform curriculum that we're seeing in high school, and that's where we can really engage. Employers need to be stepping up and funding and supporting in internships, apprenticeships, understanding what career pathways look like. That is a big word when we say pathways. Pathways mean that students can be more than just finding a good job. It is around building out a career. And you don't know what you do not know if you are not understanding, oh, I can start out at a patient care tech, then I can go on to a registered nurse, or I can go on to X, Y, and Z. And I say that honestly because my mother was an educator for 40 years. And while I had the benefit of going on to being in a private school, exposure is everything. And those internships matter. And on a personal note, when I talk about when students come, particularly, if I may be honest, students of color, we had one young lady was in the private bank. She is a student at Cornell. And I asked her, I said, oh, I'm Michelle Thomas, what is your name? And she said, Lana. And I said, where did you go to school? And she, Cornell. I said, why are you whispering that, first of all? I mean, Cornell, I would have been saying Cornell. Cornell.
Yes.
And so I coached her, and she ended up getting a job offer to come back next year. But more importantly, you sometimes are invisible on these floors. So if you're in corporate America and you see a person of color that's on there, that is not necessarily their comfort level. And so by me speaking to my other colleagues, they walked her around each and every floor, introduced her to each and every person. They began to have lunch with her, which propelled her to get a job. We owe it to these students.
Absolutely. Well, I would love for you guys to sort of maybe unpack for the folks that are participating today, what can they do as business and civic leaders really to engage? I love what you're talking about too, Michelle, is you don't know what you don't know. Right? And so what are some of the things that we can do maybe earlier, right? Like, let's not wait till, oh, it's graduation, what do we do? What are some things that they can do, one, to help provide that post-secondary pathway, and then really maybe to build more awareness around the needs in really regardless of the size of their community. So I'd love for you guys maybe to just share some things that you've learned and that we can have some takeaways.
Yeah, you can go first.
Yeah, and so one, again, it goes back to employers identifying the gaps that employers need in the workplace. What are those skills that are needed? How can you lean in and invest in a student by helping them with their mock interviews, helping them with skill building, apprenticeships, and all of that's really important. And the reality of it is that even when you participate in a summer youth employment program, employers are a little hesitant about having some 17-year-old come, like, what can they really be doing? But it's more to it than that. They learn by sitting in a meeting with you. And so I just think that when you take on an intern, which is probably the most difficult place for employers to convince them to do, because they feel like it's busy work, again, it's your duty to give them skills that are value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's so important.
I think not knowing where everybody's from, many of you probably have an organization similar to or doing some kind of work like T3. It may not be as good as us. I can talk to you about that. Like, we was heavily researched to understand what we're doing here, but the work is really important. We also partnered with, it's very important to make this work happen, with a national organization called the College Advising Corps, and it was founded in Virginia. They're across the country at college campuses. Essentially, think of it like AmeriCorps or Peace Corps. They take recent college graduates, many of them first generation themselves. Some of these students actually return to their home high schools to serve in a college advising capacity for 2 to 3 years. And at TCU, where we're partnered at the College Advising Corps at TCU, our students also receive a free master's degree while they're serving in those local schools. Amazing. By doing this at really low ratios to give students a chance, like it might be as many as 6 to 7 College Advising Corps members in an individual high school, you're lowering those ratios like 1 to 100, because when you really research college counselors across the country, the average is 1 to 400. So that means that counselor has time to meet with one student one time per year. It's just not enough. Not to mention the fact that they're having to do counseling for those students and the families all year long as well. So providing the human capital support, and these are near peer advisors too. These are folks not like us that kids are gonna roll their eyes at, right? These are recent college graduates they can identify with, that they feel like they can believe in them also to help them find their pathway. And the last thing, ask your school districts what they're doing in this space. Because K through 12 education does have to change. It needs to change not because school districts are doing something wrong, it's because business leaders have to say, hey, over here, this isn't working. right? We don't have what we need. There's a huge disconnect, and we want to be a part of that solution. And I would challenge you that higher education doesn't have to be the intermediary all the time. You need those partnerships, especially with your community colleges, but business leaders can absolutely intersect directly with K through 12 to make sure our teachers and administrators know what you need in a workforce before those students graduate high school.
I love that. Sooner and more comprehensive. Anything else to add?
And I will say this, and so we did a small investment around what we call degree inflation. And so we know that a job at an employer may say, let's just take for example in IT, you may post it in HR as a 4-year degree. But when you really kind of comb through it, an industry recognized credential will work because when they first come into the job, that's what they're doing. And so how do we reduce degree inflation in the workplace? And HR talent team leaders need to be thinking about that more seriously. And then I'm gonna say one other thing. I think we need to give a huge shout out to T3 because it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor Mattie, is that 10,000 pledges have been done, and when you talk about system change, that is huge. So to all of you all that are in this room, in this place, that have ever impacted a student and have encouraged them, we thank you as well.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Well, this is all the time we have. I think we could all continue to listen to this for such a long time. I thank you both for your service and for the incredible work you're doing to transform our communities. And I look forward to sort of unpacking workforce development in an additional panel today. But for now, we're going to move on to our next panel.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you all very
thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it.